Alrighty. Hello, everybody, and thank you guys so much for joining us here today. I am accompanied by our awesome managing attorney here at Powers Law Group. And today, on our weekly Friday webinar, we're going to be discussing the extension of status and immigration under COVID 19. As we all know, COVID 19 has impacted some immigration, and Attorney Powers will give us the intel on what's been going on. Okay, so just a little bit on our managing attorney. She founded our firm since November 2009, so we are over a decade strong. She is also a board certified immigration attorney here in Texas, so that is awesome. And to top it off, she's also an author. She is an author of Build and Manage Your Successful Immigration Law Practice Without Losing Your Mind. It's a really nice read, you all. If you're a business owner or anybody who is trying to start their own business or just wants to have a good read, 1010 would recommend. So, we're going to go ahead and I'll let Attorney Powers take it away with our learning objectives. Yep. So, go ahead, Attorney Powers.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I think I need to be host to share my screen. But while I just want to say Happy Valentine's Day, Happy Lunar New Year, Happy President's Day, Happy Stay Warm this weekend, and also Happy birthday to Dana,
Oh,
our
yes.
fearless hostess to the mostest, who's always here on our webinars every Friday. So as you can sometimes see, she's got balloons in the background as decorated at the office.
Excuse my phantom balloons.
Yeah, I mean, you don't even need a filter. You have a really pretty background with your birthday decorations. But we are being festive. So extension of status, I really wanted to bring this up because we've had to do so many this year with a lot of people who
Yeah.
were in the United States. Generally, the story is they were on a tourist visa. They were only going to be here for a little while. And then come mid-March 2020, things changed, right? And they didn't know what they were supposed to do. And some people we've come to us a little bit later and um, it's been quite a long time, since their I-94 had expired, but we've been working on solutions. And so really this is a more of a very specific topic, but it's also something we've seen a lot due to COVID. And we have a lot of content here and it's going to be recorded so you can take a look at it later, but I'm just going to try to give you the big picture idea. And this is really for those who, mostly who might have been on a tourist visa, needed to get an extension. Maybe you did it on your own the first time, maybe you want to double check if you did it right, or you want help on the second time, because we're getting closer to a year since people have been, in many cases, not able to leave the US or get into their home country or another country.
Yeah.
Um, so that's the reason why I wanted to bring this up. And there's like some technical things like when to file, and if you file late, what does that mean for unlawful presence and things like that. So we'll go a little bit more into detail on that. But you can always ask us a question and we can address that in the Q&A. Or you can raise your hand and we can talk about it. So an extension of status is basically just what it sounds like. You're getting more time to what you have. Um, so you've been here, what we've seen mostly, like I mentioned, is for a tourist who wants to extend, but it can also be for what other status you may be, like an F1 or E2 or something along those lines. And so you're extending the status into the future. There's also change of status, which is to change it from like potentially a B2 to an F1, a student, a tourist to a student, but we're focusing mostly on the extension of status. So ideally you want to file about a few months before your I-94 is going to expire. Because you want to make sure that it gets receipted. There's been, which means like mostly accepted, but that they acknowledge that they have it and they've paid that they took your money and cashed it and gave you a receipt. The reason I mention that, you're like, well, that should be obvious. Well, it's not, because there's been some really horrendous backlogs, especially in Texas Service Center, for filings around like October, November, and such, that have not been receipted yet. And so it really is unnerving for those who um, need to know that it got receipted on that date. Because if for any reason it gets rejected, then that date it didn't start. And what could happen is that if it gets rejected, you'd have to start all over, and then you'd be late to your filing, which can have other ramifications. We've seen a case where a person filed for a petition, and it was rejected maybe 4 or 5 weeks later. They filed on their own because they had the wrong version of the form. It could just be one page of the forms could be wrong, but then by the time they filed it again, it was too late. So this it can be very unforgiving in some respects. So what if the departure date's coming and you want to stay longer? Well, this is where you would be filing these extension of status, and this is what we've been doing for a lot of our clients. And so we'll continue to talk a little bit more about that. So when is it needed? If you're on a tourist visa and you've got maybe one more month and you're realizing you can't leave the US because of what have you, or maybe you've filed one extension, but that's only good for 6 months if once they grant it, and you need to do another one. These are the times when you need to be talking about these and exploring these options. I've also, this also could apply for those on F visas more predominantly. Those are the ones we would see more, or maybe even E2. Maybe they generally would just leave and come back in on and get more of an extension, but they can't because of travel concerns. So these are times when you could explore these options. So eligibility, if you need to extend your stay, obviously be lawfully admitted on a non-immigrant visa, that this status remains valid. So that those issues can be tricky, because if a person's tourist visa is expiring, or their E2 or their what have you, you'd have to make a decision as to the risk of you might not be able to get the extension as long as you want, and you need to have these conversations. And then no crimes, that no violated conditions of admission, and that the passport is valid and will remain valid during the duration of stay. Now this one has been another challenge. Obviously for Venezuela, they're giving sort of an automatic extension, just because there's an understanding that those passports cannot be renewed. We recently had a case, I think, from Bolivia, where the client's passport had expired, and we knew that they weren't going to be able to get it renewed. Many cases, people have to go to the embassy in the United States in some large city. Maybe that's not where they live, physically, and just the travel itself would be dangerous. And so we've been having to work with those type of situations where passports have been expiring. People didn't anticipate having to stay in the US this long, and so it's causing some more complications. But generally the rule is that if you could only ask for it as long as the visa and your passport, the expiration and also the validity of your passport are allowed. There are some exceptions, but this is time when you definitely would want to have an immigration attorney advise you and make sure that you're doing the right thing. So it's expired, or it's about to expire. So if it has it's already expired, let's just say your tourist visa or your F1 or what have you has already expired. There is a way to file, and it's called a nunc pro tunc, and you're asking them to give you the date from whence it expired, until now, and you give them an reason, unforeseen circumstances, health conditions, a combination of given bad advice by the school, by another attorney, by I don't know who. But you'd want, if you can make a compelling case, you can get that status given to you from when it originally expired until when you ask it for. The thing is, the longer you wait to ask, the less compelling it can seem. It's like, what were you doing? Now, of course, I live in this space. I know it. And that's why I'm sharing this information, because what I've seen is that a lot of people have had some
Mm-hmm.
misconceptions on this. And I, one thing I really wish would happen is if in legislatively or a policy or what have you from USCIS, would there be just a memo of understanding that gives people a little bit more leeway on this situation. We've been having extensions for responses to requests for evidence and notice of intent to deny. There were like 30-minute additions to ESTA visas, about mid 2020. But that we really haven't seen like a policy memo on for people who just didn't realize that they had to file or had issues like passport expired or visa expired and still were basically stuck here for. So anyway, the point is if your I-94 has already expired and you're wanting to stay in status, there still could be hope with a nunc pro tunc. It's one of the funnest things I get to say. I don't know if it's on a regular basis. But you'd want to act quickly. You'd have to have some good reasons. And the other thing is if you know, if you needed, like if you're going in at 9 months and you should have applied, a while ago, you might have to file a nunc pro tunc and an additional change of status to help bridge that time to where you are. Now, if your visa is about to expire and you don't know how long you need, just ask for the maximum of 6 months for like the tourist extension, because if you had to leave the country before then while it's pending, you can respond back by showing verification that you had left. And then they will eventually approve it to, in theory, in general, they will approve it to the date that you left. This is an issue because if you later on want to apply for another tourist visa, a student visa, E2, whatever, another non-immigrant visa, you want to make sure that you don't have any unlawful presence. And that's why this matters so much, because you're trying to preserve your record for the future. So as to what if I file for the extension, but my I-94 is expiring soon? Okay, like this is what I will just say, like big picture. One thing is that if you file before it expires, then and it's been receipted and accepted, then you're not accruing unlawful presence while it's pending. But if you file it late, you are accruing unlawful presence while it's pending. And the only way that you will rectify that is if they later approve it. So that's sort of a bit of that Russian roulette, I guess you could say, because if you decide to stay and do a nunc pro tunc, or you're filing it maybe really close to the deadline and you haven't gotten it receipted yet, you're not going to know for sure if it was filed. Uh, you definitely know it wasn't filed on time because it was late, or you might not be close to the deadline. So so this is why another thing to consider is unlawful presence. So there's unlawful presence and there's status, and they're not the same thing, but a lot of times they're interconnected. So that's something that you want to look at. And these are concerns that we generally have to go over when we're talking with our clients. Now, would you like to change to another status? You can, if you're eligible for that other status and you file timely. Like for example, if a person's on a student visa, tourist visa at B2, and they want to study here, then they would have to go get their I-20 get accepted from the school, get the I-20, get all that stuff, and then they could file to change to an F1. But you can't start school until the F1 gets approved. Now, one thing I haven't really said right now yet is that the lease processing times are ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, w- a nunc pro tunc we filed, I think, in January 2020. We just got approved, I think, at the end of January 2021. And
Mm-hmm.
the processing times that don't are not always accurate, the ones that are listed on the website for USCIS. Now, I have a lot of faith. Maybe I'm too optimistic, but I will just be optimistic in our new secretary, Alejandro Mayorkas, because he was the head of USCIS in the past. And I think we're already starting to see some changes where there's a little more communication, more accessibility with info passes, ombudsman thing. I mean, it's slow, but it's slow start. I mean, it's only been recent, right? It hasn't even been a month for the new president, but and even less so. I mean, Mayorkas was put in, I think, early February 2nd or something. So just not too long ago. But anyway, I guess what I'm saying is the processing times for some of these extensions of status are longer than the period of time you're asking for. For example, cases that we filed last March, April, May, June, we still don't have approved, but we had to go and ask for another extension to give us another 6 months. So if you can wrap your head around this, it's going to take longer to get an approval for something than the period of time that you ask for the approval. So it means you're going to be in this constant state of wondering whether or not it got approved or not. But if you came here last year, 2020, and you needed to get extension, you filed for the 6 months, but you haven't gotten the approval yet, then you file again for another 6 months to bridge you into the future with the anticipation that the first one gets approved. So that's what this is about. This is what you have to do. But in terms of changing to another status, you have to have a status to change from.
Yeah.
So I sort of describe it like there's chain links. Like you can't you can't have a gap. There has to be one that attaches to the next.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. I need to think of better analogies,
You
but
can't go from A to C. You gotta
yeah,
you
you
gotta
can't.
get
Okay,
to
good.
B
Thanks,
first.
Dana. Yeah. So that's a good one. All right. But sometimes you might have this imaginary bee and you're like, it's sort of there, So like, maybe I can, but only if you lay the groundwork, even if it's not officially approved bee. Anyway, um,
As long as the B is in the area,
in the motion and you
in the
filed
motion.
it, even if it's not approved. Now, normally we wouldn't suggest doing all this because you're like, oh, well, what if B doesn't get approved? You had a tourist, you did an extension and it's still not approved, but you want to move over to F1 or something else or what have you. So I talk about those individual risk and backup plans and things like that. Now, the other thing that I just want to, yeah, okay, here's the extension of filing deadlines. You're right. So we did have a slide on that. But the one thing I guess I wanted to say is that our jobs as immigration attorneys have gotten really difficult because you may ask us about US immigration law. I can tell you about that, because I keep on top of all of these changes, but I can't always keep up with the country you want to go to or the country you need to travel through, quarantine, COVID, what am I trying to say? Restrictions
Regulations,
and
yeah.
regulations. Like I hear in the periphery, Canada's got some strong quarantine rules going on now, and I know that we have concerns for people from most of the Schengen countries that's still in place. They can't have been there in the last 2 weeks. There's some exceptions if national interest or relative family married to U.S. citizens, some exceptions. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is there's multiple layers to this whole thing, and we can tell you about the U.S. immigration, but you have to consider all of these other factors. So there are delays in they understand that there's a lot going on. They have delays in their filing of their adjudication. But the biggest thing is to file as soon as you can, as soon as you realize what's going on. Talk to an immigration attorney and get things filed. So just in concluding thoughts, because we, don't file too late. You just try really hard to, and we've seen all different things where people say, oh, I thought that my visa expired on this date. Sorry, my a battery. We don't want that to go out. Um, some people have told us, well, I thought that my pass visa expired at the end of the month and it was the beginning of the month. So one thing you could do is go take a look at your I-94 right now. If you didn't get a stamp in your passport, you can go and look for the electronic I-94 online, and then find out what that date is and make sure to apply about a month or two before it so that it gets receipted and there's no late filing. Nunc pro tunc, if you have to file late after the fact, they are possible. We need to have good reasons. It can work. It could take a long time to get the results of it. So just there, you have to decide, are you willing to live with that uncertainty?
Hmm.
Or do you, what are you willing to live with? And then plan ahead. Like if you know that you're going to need another extension because you haven't gotten the COVID shot yet, or your country hasn't opened up for you to be able to leave, um, or you're thinking about another visa opportunity or what have you, just plan ahead. Check in with us if we're your immigration attorney, if we've had a consult with us, or whomever you do, but just plan ahead because that you'll have a better result, honestly. So I think we've covered the main gist of it. A good like 30-ish minutes, 20-30 minutes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, bottom line, don't be afraid. Look at your expiration dates, plan ahead. If it's late, you still can overcome it, but you might have a little bit limited options, but it's still doable. You're wanting to preserve your record. You don't want to have unlawful presence. You don't want to run out of status. And that's, I think, the bottom line. So if you enjoyed this webinar, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in our Q&A. But if you have, we're going to be doing another one next Friday on the E2s investment, and we're also going to do the following Friday on the Violence Against Women Act
Mhm.
considerations and the visa process. And thanks so much for watching.
Yeah, so just following up on Ruby, what Attorney Powers was saying, sometimes whenever I do handle phones, we get a lot of calls, and these individuals seem distressed. They're like, "Oh my God, how can I get back to my country if they're
Mhm.
closed? My visa's about to expire. What's going on?" So it does cause a lot of dismay. So we urge you guys to speak to a professional. I mean, I would recommend Powers Law Group, but if you guys do or find yourselves in that situation, a family member or someone, speak to somebody who can help you all, and they'll be sure to assess the best possible ways for you all. But yeah, that'll be it for us today. We hope to see you all next Friday and on our Powers Hours, where we do little tidbits on what we're going to be talking about and any news that we hear that have changed in immigration. So just to follow up, if you guys want to subscribe to our newsletter that we send out bi-weekly, go to our website at rubypowerslaw.com. Should be up here. And there's a pop-up. You put in your email, sign in, bam, you're added to the newsletter. And that's the best way to stay up to date with news and immigration and anything going on PLG related. We also try to add some locals, like how Governor Abbott is going to be opening big super sites for COVID. I don't know if you guys have heard of that, but check it out on our newsletter if you haven't. And again, follow us on any of our social medias where we update regularly. And if you missed any of our past presentations, just go to our YouTube and our Facebook. That is where you can find them. And if you have any questions or concerns on any immigration question, give us a call at 713-589-2085 or send us an email at contact@rubypowerslaw.com. But that is it. You all have a great weekend. I know it's going to be chilly out there,
Stay
so
warm. Yeah.
yeah, stay warm, stay home, um, and happy Valentine's Day.
Eat some chocolate.
Yeah, eat some chocolate and stay warm. Buy some hot
Oh,
cocoa.
cocoa. Yeah, that sounds good.
What else? What else could we want?
I don't know, but happy Lunar New Year,
Yes.
happy Valentine's, happy President's Day. We are open on Monday and Tuesday, but we're probably going to be working remotely just because of the inclement weather in the Houston area, which hasn't
Yeah.
happened to that extreme since apparently the 80s. So We'll find out, but stay safe.
Hopefully we see some snow, Houston.
Yeah, hashtag snow. Houston snow.
Well, you all have a great weekend. And again, stay safe and stay warm. Bye, guys.
Okay, bye.